1490 Doom is a grimdark, miniature agnostic, low model count skirmish game that's big on vibes, and you can play a game in around 30 minutes. Basically, it's perfect. My first Doom company would represent the remnants of a once noble house, so I selected one of the new Cultist Knight models from Frostgrave for its I've got armour but things are not good aesthetic. A beardy barbarian face from the Frostgrave range, self-decapitated, but once affixed through the magic of chemistry, helped reinforce the bleak and desperate theme. This double-handed sword had a much-needed fistectomy, and since I'm the generous type, I blessed it with a replacement grip. This provided me with a sword in a relaxed but burdened pose that would feel like Hamlin was overburdened by whatever precious scraps he can scavenge, which is why he's carrying a chicken. Fans of the channel will recognise my enduring commitment to using up backpacks from the Wargames Atlantic Le Grognard kit, and one of my favourite Greeblies from the Frostgrave Cultist set. The model was finished off with a useful looking coil of rope and a spare axe, which I think came from the Victrix Medieval Foot Knight sprue, but my note-taking is unreliable at best. There we go, a nice, simple but characterful model to ease us in. But in my vision of 1490 Doom, things get weird. My second Doom company is a group of forest dwellers that have, to put it mildly, been rather inconvenienced by the creeping miasma that plagues the land. Prince Raldus is, for lack of a better description, a spider centaur. More accurately, at this stage of the build, he's a bit of styrene tube with legs. This is definitely one of those trust the process moments. With the six-legged spider, yeah, I know, part looking nothing like it should, I hacked apart a Wargames Atlantic City Guard model for his modest torso. To make him more accepting of his styrene tube destiny, our old friend Rotary Doom made an appearance, followed by some filing, sanding, and the obligatory application of adhesion. By the way, I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and it's unclear why I've moved the intro this far into the video. After a few frames of what is arguably the most suggestive thing I've ever done on camera, I vaguely pushed and prodded the green stuff to both disguise the tube-like origin of the spider bod and to blend it into the human torso. A search of the Frostgrave Barbarian sprue provided what I think is pretty much the archetypal blacksmith head, which was affixed atop the torso since I felt like that was the most opportune place for it. The green stuff made an appearance again, this time with less of the hardener to make the creation of these armour plates a little bit easier. If you're wondering, he's got an armoured spider groin for the sole purpose of unifying the look of the spider and man parts. Speaking of spider parts, they all got a bit of love from the texture fairy to emulate the sort of fuzzy crustiness that I feel when I think of Spider Bros, but isn't really there in reality. After the crushing necessity of basing came the grim inevitability of weaponizing. This double-handed axe was from the Frostgrave Knight's kit. I chose it for the sort of stoic pose that I thought a spider blacksmith would maintain, or something. Being a forest fella, Raldus needed a raggedy cloak, for which I used my usual method of cheesecloth soaked in matte Mod Podge. I tease this roughly into shape and tack it in place with a drop or two of thin CA glue before engaging in a bit more light prodding. Round the back, I secured this weapon-filled pouch from the Wargames Atlantic City Guard set and broke out the model ship rigging cord to fashion some kind of strap. You could use a pair of twisted wires for this, but I like the texture that you get from using this type of cord. And there you have it, your friendly neighbourhood man spider. Look, he's got 8 limbs now. Bet you feel silly for questioning that. Back to the noble folk now for a man of the cloth covering a sea of chainmail. These Victrix Medieval Foot Knights are brilliant sculpts, by the way, though I did need to give this guy a bit of neck surgery. After giving him a thorough basing, I turned my attention to the limb situation and found that same Victrix sprue had the perfect answer in the hands, literally, of a crucifix. I don't know if they work on spiders. Do they work on spiders? Anyway, a Frostgrave Cultist Knight head seemed to fit the vibe, and the neck socket that I'd made, which was helpful. And because I like the imagery of a warrior priest beating an enemy to death with a blunt object, I gave Gilwell a mace. This tiny little dagger covered in roses is a nail art charm, and boy is it charming in a Bauhaus sort of way, as is this little bag of scrolls from the Frostgrave Wizards 2 set. Predictably, another Le Grognard backpack made an appearance. Less predictable was the slotting action, which was to receive some of Temu's finest jewellery. This cheap necklace doodad was glued into a slot on the underside of the pack to give my priest an over-the-top regal vibe, hinting at the wealth of the former inhabitants of Foxhall. And, now complete, Gilwell looks ready to smite even the foulest of inhabitants of a world ravaged by the creeping death. Speaking of which, over on Team Forest Mutant, things are getting a bit assassin-y. I enjoyed the last Victrix medieval foot knight so much I thought I'd bifurcate one, pressing its legs into service under something slightly less conventional. Said unconventional thing was the body from one of those mantic reapers that donated their limbs to Project Spidification. The narrow waist needed some blending with green stuff, and with a little bit of detail sculpted in to ape the texture of the surrounding musculature, it actually looked pretty convincing to my untrained eye. After thinking about weapons for a while, I saw this pair of hook-wielding hands from the Warhammer Underworld's Ghoul and decided that they had a certain amount of brutal charm to them. And speaking of brutal charm, I modified the neck joint with some rotary ablation in order to affix the Reaper head at a more, I want to say, human angle. With the quad-jawed lizard face in place, all that was left to do was some gentle cloaking via the medium of cheesecloth to give Moss some aesthetic common ground with his Arachno captain. Well, that was a fun build, but I can't help but think this setting is missing a bloke with a massive hammer. As a former member of the judiciary, Dawes needed a robe, but perhaps not a nice one, so a Frostgrave barbarian stepped up to the plate. The Hammer of Justice started out as a set of arms from the Cultist 3 set, but after some time spent dissolving the fine mould lines I'd missed before assembly, I decided that Justice needed to pack a bigger punch. So I cut away the sensible hammerhead and replaced it with an altogether more impressive model from that barbarian set that provided the body. For reasons that are best known to past me, I added this shield from the Frostgrave Knight's kit to the hip, then spent some time retroactively adding a rope to his waist to give it some sort of plausible method of attachment. I find it's best to make life hard for yourself by just doing everything in the wrong order. Armoured man with a big hammer is certainly well-trodden ground, but what about a beekeeper that's turning into a bee? Looking through the character classes in the 1490 Doom rulebook convinced me that I needed a beekeeper. Ismay procured her body from the Frostgrave Wizards 2 set, and like all other Doom Company members, had her splash base carefully removed with some razor saw action. After the whole putting her on a base business was in the rearview mirror, I followed that well-trodden YouTuber path of forcing in a scene about coffee. Except in this case it's relevant. Coffee filter paper has a really nice fibrous texture that I thought would make for some excellent insectoid wings. After some cutting, I tacked a pair of wings together and glued them onto the model in about the sort of place that you might expect a human to grow bug wings. I then set about setting them, in this case with some thin CA glue which leached into the paper and once cured produced a surprisingly strong fibre-reinforced composite material with a nice membrane-like texture. Magic. The Beekeeper's mask was a bit of a stroke of genius. This is actually a woven basket from the Wargames Atlantic Fantasy Villager set, with their hand shaped to look like a neck, obviously. Like all good apiarists, Ismay needed a polearm. I hacked one together from the lower half of a staff and the upper part of a two-handed polearm, to get something nice and dangerous looking. Once that was on the model and the top pinned in place, I used another of the arms from the Wizards 2 set that read as, "I'm conjuring a swarm of stripy fuzz misery," which, as we all know, is the best kind of misery. To round the model out and to tie her in thematically with the rest of the forest mutant folk, I gave Queen Bee a hood made from the usual Mod Podge cheesecloth blend, and after some of the expected cajoling, called it a day. And that, my friends, is Doom. Honestly, I can't recommend this game enough. It basically costs nothing to get involved, takes very little effort to create a warband, and the gameplay is fun and, importantly for me, fast. I've never recommended actually leaving the house to do anything, let alone play a game on this channel before. That's how much I rate this. Anyway, if you made it this far, write something about bees in the comments.